Dear learners, today is day 11th of your workshop, and today Professor Vandana Singh will be with us on a topic contextualizing curriculum. So she will join soon the session, and as this is the last live session from headquarters, tomorrow there will be no live session for this workshop from headquarters in afternoon, and tomorrow the day is basically for your presentations of the previous activities if anyone has left, and also if you can submit your things to your study center, you can submit till tomorrow, or your study center can provide you some more days to submit your reports of the workshops, internship and EPC activities. In tomorrow afternoon, there will be the valedictory session from the regional center level. So all RCs will manage that session, and we will join that your sessions on your platforms wherever you all are joining. So I'm just waiting the learners to join. The moment the learner will join, the session will start. And as you all know that your study centers must have shared with you a Google form link for the feedback. So if you have submitted your feedback, it's okay. But if you have not submitted your feedback, then you are requested to submit your feedback on that link. The link I will share again and again in the chat of the today's live session also, so that if you have missed your feedback, you can submit there your feedback. And I hope that you will enjoy today's session without any technical glitch. Hope so, and it will be a good session. So session will start around 5 to 6 minutes after this. It was a quite pleasant experience with all of you, and we have enjoyed a lot. I hope you all also have enjoyed the learning on this new platform. We tried to help you, to facilitate you through this Facebook Live in this pandemic situation, because it was not possible for all of you to come to your study center to attend the workshop continuously for 12 days in a large group. Specifically in J&K, the number of students is comparatively more than the other study centers across the country. Though there were some technical issues in few sessions, there were some delays, some repetitions. Yesterday, there was some electricity and internet cut, so the session was delayed by 5 6 minutes, the second session. But overall, it went well, and most of the sessions were nicely presented from our part. But whether they have reached to you, whether you have taken any benefit of those sessions, that is more important, and that's why we are going to share a feedback link with you. I have already communicated that feedback link to all the study center in charges. They must have shared with you. If you people have not filled, you can fill it by tomorrow or today evening, because it will take hardly 2 minutes. So you just click on that link and submit your details and feedback, because it will also tell us that how many of you are actually attending the sessions and participating in the live sessions and all that. So within few minutes, Professor Vandana Singh will join us, and she will continue with her sessions. So I thought that till she join, I should take this opportunity to talk to all of you, so that you all can connect with us. We are just waiting for the students to join. The moment they will join, we will start the session. Because already 350 have joined. I think today joining rate is quite slow as compared to other days, so that's why we are waiting. The moment you all will join, we will start the session. So next 2 or 3 minutes, the session will start. You all join quickly. I can see students have joined from Koraput, from Srinagar, from Kupwara, from Bhubaneswar, from many people, places, Satwari, Jammu diet. So I think a good number have joined, so we can start the session. In the meantime, others will join.
So good morning learners, and I welcome you all.
No, only this one will be here. No, you cannot see that. You need a second system. No, it will not visible on your screen. You just live there.
Good morning to you all, and I welcome you all to this session. And today is our last session for this workshop, and I hope you all have enjoyed thoroughly with the sessions which have been taken, and they were found to be uh, meaningful to you all. And today, what we are going to discuss is the topic that is contextualizing curriculum. And this topic has been chosen from your core course BES 126, that is knowledge and curriculum. Uh, I think in the last session, when we were talking about, we discussed about analyzing the curriculum. We did talk about what is important or why should we be analyzing the curriculum. So now when you by now you must have been very clear the importance of analyzing the curriculum. But analysis happens during the classroom and even after the classroom. So what we are going to discuss today is about something which is known as contextualization and why it is to be done, how it has to be done. Is it really important to do contextualize learning? That is one thing which we are going to understand. So you all are teachers, right? You go into the class with certain aims in your mind. You have certain content which you want to deliver to your student, and you want a maximum output from your student. But when you enter the classroom, you see a blackboard, and then you see so many faces of your students. You want that this blackboard, you use this blackboard as your, knowledge delivery agent, and entire thing what you have planned for your classroom must be delivered. And this question mark which is there in the heads of your students must be filled with their own perceived knowledge. You know, when I say their own perceived knowledge, what does that mean? See, as a teacher, when we enter the classroom, what is there? We teachers are usually seen as the agent of change. And when we enter the classroom, there is always one thing in our mind that there are certain objectives which need to be met. But For meeting out these objectives, it is important that my learner is equally involved in that process. Why do you think that is important? Why is it important to involve the learner in the process of learning? Can you tell me? I'm sure you all are involving your learners in your learning, but why is it so? Why it is important that the learners must be involved in learning? Any answers from your end? I think most of you are still joining, so um, maybe I'll get the answer after some time, or maybe you'll get some. I'll try to be a little more. I think my voice is not coming out clearly, so I'll try to be a little more louder. Okay, and you let me know whether it is coming now clearly or not. Okay, so what I am trying to say is why is it important that the learner must be involved in learning? Why is it so? Why the learner should be actively involved in learning? And if we do not involve learners, what will happen? Can you share some of your thoughts? Okay, let me move forward. See, when the school as a whole, or when a learner enters into the classroom, when the learner enters into the classroom, the learner brings along variety of experiences, and those experiences are, very very beneficial for a teacher to use. If the teacher uses those experiences of the learner, your teaching becomes much more meaningful to them. So that is why it is important that you need to involve learners into learning, right? Yes, Pooja, when you say that they will become passive learners otherwise, yes, to involve learners actively, it is important that you make them participate, as Babita is also telling, and Mr. Sunil and Ritu, you are all hinting towards that the learning becomes more fruitful, the teachers also start enjoying the classroom, and that is how, if there is a more participation from both sides, as Mr. Anil Mulchi is saying, when the participation is more, then the learning will become much more meaningful, right? So therefore, um, next thing which comes to our mind, what impacts the learning mode? What are the, when you say the experiences they bring with them, then what are those factors which affect the learning? Because the learner is a social being, we cannot divide him from the context where the student is coming from. For example, the student from JNK and a student from, say, Odisha or any part of the country, they will be coming up with their social context. And those social contexts are very important, because those must be used by the teachers to, make learning much more fruitful. And this is, yes, when some of you say that this is called constructivism, then yes, it is called constructivism. And without involving the learner, we cannot get appropriate results. But what I am trying to say, that what are the factors which affect learning? What are those factors? Can you list them? Let me show you now one more slide. See, learning is influenced by the home environment, the school environment, and also the community from which the student is coming. When I say home environment, what is there in home environment that affects learning? Can you tell me? Or in the school environment, or is the community environment? What is there? What are those specific factors in all these three areas which can affect learning? See, when home is a place where the student, the learner, where the learner has, where the learner actually spends a lot of time, and after that the school is the next place where the learner spends a lot of time. So when you say the school environment must be good or the home environment must be good, what does that mean? What should be good in home and school which makes learning much more fruitful? What is that? Yes, yes, Mrs. Sanjukta, yes, you are right. It's the education of the parents, right? It's the cultural beliefs and the values in the home. It is the parenting style of the parents, home environment, family members that contributes to the parenting style of the parents, right? If it is very democratic, if it is very autocratic, how it impacts the overall learning in the house. Even resources at home, it is a major factor which contributes to learning, right? And the place, when Madhu, you say that the place where a student gets the time to express oneself, that means there is a lot of freedom for the student to express. There they will feel much more, happy, they will feel much more relaxed, and they will appreciate the entire thing in a much better way. So this is what when we say school environment. And when you to say school, sorry, this is what we say home environment. And when we say school environment, it does involve teachers, teaching style, learning style, and other school resources which are available. So all these also impact the learning in the school. I have already discussed parental atmosphere, and also the third thing, that is community environment. Therefore, that because each one of us are social beings, we come with our cultural beliefs. When Manita, you say that cultural belief, social life, we all come from a community and we are all specific. We all have specific, understandings of our beliefs. And when we enter into a classroom, it becomes an amalgamation of so many cultural views, values. So a classroom must be a place where the diversity must be encouraged, where and all the learners they feel safe, then only the proper learning will take place, right? So we can say, yes, we can say that school education is a very complex process which involves social concerns of teaching and learning, and these concerns they present both the challenges as well as the demands, right? Demands and challenges to whom? For the learner, right? Therefore, we need to develop every time, we need to develop new pedagogic tools which will promote better learning environment in the classroom, right? Therefore, the curriculum which we talk about, the curriculum is a process. It is just not a compilation of the content, right? It is just not, the other day when we were discussing, it is a set of learning experiences. It is just not the content. It is a process that involves experiences which are lived in school and all other experiences which a learner gets from home, community, and all these experiences they build together and help in achieving the goal of learning. Therefore, learning in schools, right, it is not a simple process, right? So the ultimate goal, when you say, Mr. Makbul, that all-round development of the learner, right? The ultimate goal is the all-round development of the learner, but that cannot take place unless all these three, what I'm talking, home, school, community, they are, interlinked with each other. So therefore, as a teacher, what is there in your hand? What can you improve? What can you improve? You can improve the school environment. But how can you improve the school environment? And how is it related to the delivery of the content, or when I say delivery of the curriculum? See, as a teacher, what you can do, you can improve the school environment. How can you improve the school environment or your teaching, if I say so? Can you tell me how can we increase the school environment or the class environment? See, in a class is when I say the students are coming from different social backgrounds. So how can we improve the class environment to deliver or to achieve the ultimate goal of learning or to achieve the goals of curriculum? See what how we can do is that we can basically using the friendly teaching method, yes, by producing conducive environment, okay, but friendly method or by producing a conducive environment, what do you mean by that? See, when you say school environment or when you have to relate it to, yes, Mr. Chamanlal, when you say meeting out with the needs of the learners and involving the learners into learning, yes, we while preparing a lesson we must look into that what are the needs of the learners, and we have to satisfy the needs of the learner in such a way that students are involved in the learning, right? So when yes, Mr. Ramesh, when you say that student must be involved in learning, they must be given a chance to participate in the learning. When they will participate, what will happen? They will bring in their own notion of understandings, their own cultural beliefs. They will bring in a lot of things which they have developed in themselves as a part of a social being. So therefore, this will all impact. It will all impact the delivery of the content, that is the curriculum, right? So this is how it is important that the content must be taught and the teaching methods must be adopted as per the needs of the learner. There are many studies which have been done and which have highlighted the importance of involving the learners into learning. See, you must have also observed that the students in your class have do face certain difficulty in the concept as they are commonly taught. Difficulty in the concepts of mathematics, science, and sometimes even social science. But why do students face such a difficulty, right? And how can we overcome that? So researchers have said that we have to relate the learning in the classroom to the larger society. Why? Why we have to involve them to a larger society? When Mr. Mir Humayun, you say that linking learners to the social environment from which they come. Yes, this is what I mean. You have to relate the learning to the larger sections of the society. Then how will it become more meaningful? When you will make connections between new knowledge and the experiences which the students have, right? You have to continuously make the connections between the new knowledge which is to be presented by you and with the experiences with the students have. That means you cannot overrule or you cannot undermine the experiences which the student will bring with along with them, right? Another important thing is with what the research says, that the student engagement in the school work or in the school learning, it will increase significantly when the concepts are taught using real world context. Because school is a mini model of the society, as you say, because children come with their context in the classroom, so therefore it is important that we engage the learner actively in the learning. And engaging the learner, which means that we have to engage the learner in such a way that whatever concept we are teaching them, we have to link those concepts to the real world context, right? we have to link it. And why is it important to link the learning concept with the real world concept? Can you say? Why is it important? Why should we link our learning, the present concept, to the real world context? Why should we do that? Why should we make the connections between the two? It is because when we make the connections, as I am saying continuously, that the students are the social being. If we make continuous, continuously, if we engage the learners with the social environment, with the social context, the learning will be much more fruitful. And this is what is known as contextualization, what we are going to talk about. See, what is, when you see this classroom, the classroom is buzzing with activity, but the students are doing activity on their own. Some of them are just reading, some of them are playing, some of them are just dancing, right? And there is one teacher who is trying to teach the concept, and that particular concept is only reaching to few learners. So therefore, when Mehvish, you say that we have to actively involve the learner and relate the learner's personal experiences to make more learning much more meaningful, then only it will become contextual, right? So therefore, second point is the content and the context, right? The content which we are going to teach and the context of the learner, that also must be combined together. Because if the learning is devoid of the social understandings, the true learnings will never take place, right? And third, last point is what you should do for the contextual learning, that you must employ authentic material and authentic assessment. I will come to it. What is authentic material and what is authentic assessment? We will discuss about it later. So the entire thing, what I wanted to make you understand is that if you want to make learning contextual, then you have to you have to understand your learners' needs, as well as you have to involve your learners and give them the real life experiences. Okay. Now, you will all know that when I say contextualization or contextual learning, it has a basis in constructivist theory and learning. In constructivism, what is constructivism? Constructivism is also the way in which the learners are involved in their learning, and their learning is, their learning is taken up by the teacher, and the knowledge which they bring in the classroom, that is built up by the teacher to make a better learning, right? So this is the entire contextual learning, or when we say contextualization, it is based on their theory of constructivist learning. So the new NCF which has been presented, on which you all are teaching, on which theory of learning is it based on? Right now, the textbooks which you are using in the classroom, on which theory of learning is it based on? What is the theory which is there? Yes, yes. When you say actively involving the learners, it is the theory of constructivism. Now, for contextualized learning, there are these 5 strategies which you can use. Right? One is, I'll just go through this slide very quickly. Okay, so for contextualizing learning, these are the strategies which you can use. Yes, Mr. Panda, when you say construct of knowledge, when you say creation of knowledge, all this is what is deep rooted. It's a psychology of contextual learning. See, when you say contextual learning, the first thing is relating. Relating what? As I'm already telling you, relating the content with the context of the learner. Yes, you are all right. It is based on constructivism. Let us move on to the next slide now. Okay. So the strategies of contextual learning, the first strategy is relating. Relating what? Relating the learner to the context of learning, right? As we've been already discussing. The next is experiencing. What is experiencing? What does that mean? Learning, you must encourage learners when you want to contextualize. You must encourage your learners learning by doing, and you must employ the methods of teaching such as exploration, discovery, or even problem solving. Okay, this is, you have to provide learner with the with the scope of experiencing the learning. And how will you give that scope of experiences? When you will employ the teaching method which allows students to experience learning, and those will be those teaching methods or learning methods which are active teaching learning methods. Okay, then the third point is applying. If we don't apply knowledge, if we just understand the knowledge and if we don't apply knowledge, what will happen? Why application of knowledge is important? Why application of knowledge is important? Why is it important that you only don't only teach, but you allow your student to apply the knowledge which you have given to them? Why? See, when we apply knowledge, what happens is the students start applying the knowledge which they have understood into the real environment. And when you say it, basically develop the critical thinking, right? In the students, they basically give the students avenue to apply whatever they have learned. So when they will apply their knowledge, so the understanding of the knowledge will become much more meaningful. Okay, so therefore you must give them options when you contextualize learning. That is, when you contextualize the learning, you must give them option to apply that knowledge so that the learning, your teaching becomes much more successful. Okay, the next point is cooperating. What does that mean, cooperating? When the student learns, when the students understands a particular topic, the learning should not remain only with themselves. What they must do, that they must share that knowledge and respond to the learning needs of the others. What will happen when they will share the knowledge? Why the learning should be shared? Why the learning should be shared? Why is it important that the student and teacher continuously interact? Why is it important that? Because because all the learners are not same, and when we share knowledge, what happens when we share knowledge? We actually share our understanding. So when we share our understanding, what happens is, if at all we have any kind of misconceptions, those can be cleared out. If at all we can give out new knowledge, or new points to others, that will help the other learners to understand much more. Okay? And yes, Mr. Ashok, when you say learning through group activity, that should be the experience which you should be providing for contextualizing learning. Okay, so it is not only important to understand the learning, it is important to give them, you know, the way to experience learning, the way to apply knowledge, and after that, you must give them, the avenue to even share that knowledge, because sharing will improve the overall learning. They will become much more confident. They will clear out their conceptions, and when they will clear out their conceptions, what that will also promote group learning. They will understand the benefits of the social learning. They will get lot of, they will enhance their knowledge when you say. And the last but not the least is that transferring the knowledge, because the entire learning what we are doing, wherever we are learning, either in school, either in the society, what do we do with that knowledge? We transfer that knowledge to a new context, to the near generation, right? It's transferring the knowledge, okay? So we transfer that knowledge to a new context, to a new individual, to a new generation. And when this knowledge, which has gone through these processes, which have gone through these processes, then what will happen? That knowledge will be contextual, which will be meaningful to your present environment. And when the knowledge is more contextual, what happens? It becomes much more meaningful to the learners, right? So therefore the transferring of knowledge is very, it is the ultimate goal of the learning, right? When we say transferring the knowledge. So therefore these are the importance of using how can you do contextualization, what strategies can you do. And when you say to enhance all round development of the mankind, sharing of the knowledge keeps us alive, yes, and also sharing of the knowledge makes us much more knowledgeable, right? So these are the benefits of contextual learning, and you all have actually in your responses you have all given this answer, that the contextual learning, or when you contextualize the experiences which you provide to your learner, it leads to better learning, it leads to better retention, and it leads to increased conceptual understanding. So when there is such a lot of advantage with contextualizing the experiencing, I think we must all push together to contextualize the learning, to basically make learning much more meaningful to the students, right? This also, I think, we have discussed the value of contextualized learning or teaching, that they actually search their own meaning of learning. You use real life resources to gather information, and the content and the context of knowledge are, related. So that is how what happens, that the learning becomes much more effective, and they are able to solve their problems, they are able to come out with the new ways of learning, right? And they are able to actually integrate this new knowledge and the new knowledge into the existing knowledge. So therefore, the entire process of teaching and learning become more joyful, more active, and more meaningful. Okay. So let me come on to the definition of what we are discussing throughout. That is what contextualization is, why contextualization must be done. But before that, I want one more thing. Before that, I just want to, highlight one more thing, that throughout now we have understood that as a teacher, when I say that curriculum, then curriculum is no longer just a mere compilation of the content. What is curriculum? It is a process, that involves, you know the everyday experiences which are lived in school, and which are the part of students personal journey as well. So when you say contextualization, then it means, what does that mean then? Contextualization would mean that it is an educational process by which we relate curriculum to the particular setting, situation, or area of application to make the competencies much more relevant, meaningful, and useful to all the learners. Contextualization as a term is, it has been, in the literature, it has been used differently. There are many terms which are used for contextualization, such as student-centered learning, place-based learning, context-based learning, local knowledge. All these terms are used for contextualization, right? But what is important? when you contextualize the learning, that you identify the fundamental aspects, the central trends, and the key features which relate to the curricular contextualization, right? Let me give you some more examples of definitions of contextualization, which will help you to understand this concept much more in a much more deeper way. See, Mazio in 2008, he said that contextualization is a diverse family of instructional strategies which are designed to link the learning of the foundational skills and the academic content by focusing, teaching, and learning on concrete application in a specific context that is of the interest to the student, which means that you have to employ number of instructional strategies, but those strategies have to be in tune with the needs of the learner, in tune with the content which you are providing to the learners. Okay, so it cannot be away from that. Okay, another definition which is given by King in 2007, he refers curricular contextualization as context-based learning. Okay, and what he means by that is that this context-based of learning, which we say contextualization of the curriculum, it includes a group of learning experiences that encourages learner to transfer their understanding of the key concept to a real life situation. So therefore, in the previous slide, when we discussed about the strategies, we did talk about that the ultimate the goal of learning is the application of the learning in the real life situation or transferring the learning into the real life situation. So when we transfer, that is the main thing. So when we contextualize the learning, we have to identify the strategies which actually help the student to solve the real life problems and which actually help them to basically apply it or add on to the new knowledge. Okay, so this is what when we say contextualization. So when you say contextualization, another thing which comes to your mind, what comes to your mind? Is it a pedagogic approach? Is it a pedagogic approach? Yes, I would think that this is a pedagogic approach. Contextualization is also a pedagogic approach because this through adopting this approach, what we do that we improve the odds of curriculum, and therefore we bring in more meaning to the learning of the learners, right? To summarize, we may say that the curriculum contextualization is a concept which basically enables the learners to promote meaningful learning. Hence, there is a need to think the curriculum taking into account the individual needs, the places, and the cultures where it is embedded. So the curriculum cannot be devoid the of the culture from where it comes from. Okay? Yes, Mr. Sadiq, when you say it has to be from the prevailing context, it has to be from the context within. What will happen if the curriculum is out of context? You tell me what will happen? When you say to achieve national goals and interest, yes, yes, but if it is out of context, what will happen? See, if it is out of context, then what has happened? The content will not be aligned as per the needs of the learner. And when the content will not be aligned as per the needs of the learner, eventually the learning won't take place that meaningfully. Okay? Right? So this is what that in contextualization we have to place ideas, situations in the larger setting which is based on its true meaning. Okay? And we have to relate the subject matter content to the meaningful situation that is relevant to the student life. And Mr. Yes, you're right that it will be difficult to learn, there will be no meaningful learning, we will not be able to fulfill the objectives, and there will be no value of learning. The student won't be able to apply the learning. So therefore, by now we all have understood what contextualizing curriculum means and what is the importance of the curriculum. Now let us move forward and see when even contextualization is when contextualization happens, there are three things which comes to our mind. One is contextualization localization, is it indigenization, or is it just making connections? I think it is all of three. It is all of three. When you say it is localization, it means we have to identify the local needs of the learner, and we have to identify the local resources which are available, and we have to integrate those needs and the resources which are available to make it more localized. And when you say indigenize, see, indigenization involves much deeper, I will come to the slide later on. The indigenization basically, uh, you know, indigenization basically means involving the learning and into the socio-cultural context. There are many uh, specific tribes in India which do not follow the same language which we have. They either don't understand Hindi, English, or any other vernacular language. Instead, they have their own script. For example, in Kerala, there are Irregular tribes. There are other tribes in many tribes in Northeast, and even in Bihar, and even in Jharkhand. So, what should we do with them? The learning has to take place even there. So, what has been done? The entire content has been the script in which they speak that has been developed, and the resources which are available there, right, they are used in learning to make it more indigenized. So that is what we call as indigenized learning, that is connecting to the immediate resources what we have to make the learning much more better, and making the connections between old and new and what is present. So that makes contextualization. Okay. Again, localization, I have already told you, it involves involving the local information and local material. That is localization. And when I say indigenization, it involves the socio-cultural, the historical, and the biogeographical learning. So therefore, it is very different from what we say that uh, what I was talking previously, localization. In localization, the local knowledge, but in indigenization, it involves the socio-cultural aspect and even the historical aspect, right? So therefore, when is contextualization, we have to see where we are placed. If we are placed in an area where the contexts are very specific, if I am placed in a school in which students from a particular tribe are coming, I have to understand their specific culture, because that is different from the larger culture which they are having. So a teacher has to contextualize the curriculum accordingly. You cannot teach a concept, say for example, if you are teaching in a fishermen's colony school, right, and if I keep giving examples from the areas of hills, then they won't understand much. But if you give examples from their community, say if you want to teach them simple numeric concept of addition or maybe identifying numbers, then you may ask them the examples of how many fishes did you catch today, how many fishes did you all eat in your dinner. So that will help him in adding, and also in numeracy. So what I mean to say that where you are placed as a teacher, you have to involve the learner's perceptions, the experiences into the learning, then only they will be able to relate to the content which you are trying to teach. Okay, so how can you do the contextualization? Let me just now go through it and I will talk to it. It is a very important part, I feel. First is the curricular contextualization has to, this is actually, given by, um, this classification is given by Fernandez, okay, in 2012. So according to him, we can contextualize curriculum in these 5 ways. First, based on place. Okay? So, but based on place, what does that mean? It means that the place where we live or where the students are coming from, they have a very strong cultural features. And being a part of life habits, social background, day-to-day routine, it is much more relevant and interesting to the student to make it a part to the learning. Why is it important to basically involve the life habits, the social backgrounds of the learners? Why is it important? We've been discussing all throughout. It makes learning much more meaningful, but also when the knowledge is based on the content of the local environment, the economic surroundings, what happens, the learning becomes your own. The student starts feeling that yes, I belong to this place. Do you really feel that if you start giving them examples from their immediate surroundings, they start connecting themselves to the learning? They feel that yes, whatever we are learning is actually my learning. It is not something which is coming from the so-called frameworks. So therefore, even for this term, the term of local knowledge is also being used. So it is important, that we must pay attention to the local aspects, including the environment, the economic context, and the community. You please think of examples where you can actually use the local environment, the economic context, and the community needs to contextualize the learning based on the place of the learner. I will give you one example. See, if you say talk about if you have to tell your students about different types of plantations, the kharif and the rabi plantation, so what you can choose, you can take examples or you can actually invite examples from your students. They will tell that what kind of crops are being sown in summers and winter, and somewhere where there are no peak winters or peak summers, their crop plantations are very different. So when you will involve that, they will feel yes, it is not something alienated. They feel ownership in their learning. When Mr. Hamidullah, yes, you say that ownership of learning is much more important. So therefore, as a teacher, when I teach a particular concept, I need to see where my students are coming from. And when I give the example, I have to give the example from their own context, from their own geographical area, so that they become immediately, what happens is immediately they will connect themselves to that kind of learning. So that is much more important. So when the learning, our learning, it is based on the local features and their daily event. What happens that it improves students' learning, student achievement. By why? Because the student are establishing the connection between the day-to-day knowledge, what they see in their house or they see in their community, with the knowledge which is given in the book. So they don't actually, there is no differentiation that whatever exists in the book is very different from the knowledge which is there outside. So that is why it is important that you connect the knowledge together. This is one way of contextualizing. Another way of contextualizing is based on the students. We have already discussed that students are the central part of learning. So therefore, our entire learning must be based on what? Must be based on the needs of the learner, because the student are, the central aspect of learning. So it is important that we consider student characteristics and interests. Why it is important to consider their interest and student characteristics? Why it is important? How will it help? in learning, or how it will help in contextualizing learning? Can you tell me? See, what happens is that when the student, if they are involved, if their interests are taken care of, if their characteristics are taken care of, what happens is that they feel that they are a part of learning. They feel trustworthy. They feel that they are directed towards the learning, and they feel supported that their need of learning will be fulfilled. So it is very important that while making the curricular contextualization, it should be based on the student needs and the interest. The third aspect is based on the pedagogic practice. When you say pedagogic practice, what does that mean? See, in order to make the curricular contextualization, as in the definition also, I said it is important that you have to use diverse pedagogic practices. Why you should use diverse pedagogic practices? Because because it will promote learning, it will establish the classroom environment, and in such a way that there is a proper rhythm of learning. So therefore, to make it more contextualized, as a teacher, you have to plan and execute the classroom in such a way that the classroom environment promotes the student's success. Okay, so therefore it is important that the pedagogy which you adopt for teaching or for making the curriculum contextualized, that has to be very that has to be chosen very carefully. And there are pedagogies which are involved, which involves the active learning process. One is situated learning, one is authentic learning. When I say situated learning, it means that situating the learning within the context of the learner. So therefore, you need to provide them examples. You have to collaborate with them to make the understanding much more better, much better. So therefore, when we say that the curriculum should meet the needs of the learner, what does that mean? It should orient the learner, and we must adopt those teaching practices which actually help them to learn. The the fourth point is that the curricular contextualization has to be based on the cultural diversity of the learner. We all know that the students come from diverse cultural backgrounds, right? Classroom is a place which is often a multicultural, context. As a teacher, what it is important that you take care of the cultural context of the learner. Why it is important to take care of the cultural diversity and the context of learners? Why it is important? Because it will diminish the inequality, or it will diminish the inequality in the classroom. It will diminish the biases in the classroom. And when the classroom is free from inequality, biases, or any kind of preconceived notion, what will happen? The classroom will become a better place to learn. So therefore, when you provide examples in the classroom, when you contextualize by providing the examples in the classroom, you have to take care of the cultural needs, the cultural diversities which the students are coming from. So there are many indigenous populations in our society. Indigenous, I had already discussed. So there are many indigenous who do not share their cultural, social, or historical features with the so called us or the normal society. So, therefore, for them whose cultural identities are so distinct, so for them, when you are teaching to those students or when you are teaching in those areas, it is important that your teaching must be based on the local features, their habits, their history. Then only they will be a part of learning. and therefore it is very challenging for you as a teacher, at the same time important for you, that you have to undertake this important aspects in your mind. Okay, say for example, I can say, um, if we want to teach about various shapes, okay, or if we want to teach students about different type of angles in mathematics, okay, so apart from what is there in book, what can you do? What can you do? You can invite students their observations about types of windows which are used in their houses, okay, types of windows there, or so they will, and even the type of roofs which are made in a different backgrounds. For example, in Kashmir, the roofs are slanting roofs, okay. In other part of the countries, the roofs are not slanting, they are straight, they are leveled roofs. So therefore the angle on which these roofs are made in Jammu and Kashmir, and the angles on which the lintel is placed in the plain areas is very different. So student concepts about angles and their examples from they can be very different. And you can also take, that what will happen, you can always involve that kind of learning in your class. This is what contextualization means. There will be a different frameworks which are developed at the central level, but this is up to you as a teacher to make that contextualization happen in the classroom. And because this contextualization has got its own importance, okay. Last but not the least is contextualization, which is based on the disciplinary context, okay. See, each subject which we teach, either mathematics, either science, or even languages, they are having a different kind of a disciplinary content. So when the contents are different, what is the demand that is being placed on the teachers depending upon the different kind of content? Can you tell me? The way you teach mathematics is same as what how you teach science or languages? Is it same or is it different? And why is it different? Can you answer this? Can you answer this? Why the way we present knowledge, science or mathematics, how is it different? And why is it different? Why is it different? Because science itself science has a different objective, mathematics has a different objective, and language has a different objective. Therefore, the pedagogic processes which you will employ will have to be different. Yes, they are different, but they are different in terms of their disciplinary content. And when they are different in terms of their disciplinary content, of course you have to contextualize it. Of course you have to bring down to the level of the discipline. Therefore, when you say you have to choose different methodology to deliver different content, because and when you say that each subject has its own preference of interaction, so therefore it is important that when you do the contextualization, the pedagogy which you employ for teaching science, for teaching mathematics or language has to be very different, because each subject has got its own importance and characteristics, right? So the experiential learning, when you say, it will be much more beneficial for science, and not say in other subjects it may be beneficial but not as beneficial as in science. So therefore, when you will do this activity of contextualizing learning, Abhi, after this session, you please keep these 5 points in mind, and then you plan a lesson then you plan a lesson, and then you give examples where all you can make the contextualization. Can you make contextualization based on student learning or the pedagogic learning or the cultural diversity? How and how you can do that, right? How you can do, what is the process of contextualizing curriculum? We all have seen, first you have to identify the learner's needs, whom you are teaching, what are the issues, from where are they coming from, right? Because each individual, each learner, each context is different, so you have to identify the contextual, the need differently. Then you have to gather the information and material. That means you have to gather the information and material or resources based on the context of the learners which you have identified. Then you have to chunk and sequence your material, right? And then you have to develop authentic materials, authentic teaching, learning processes to make your learning, and then you have to develop a contextualized lesson. So the main thing is that you have to identify the learner and then you have to gather the information, meaning the content which you want to give. Okay. So this is what you can do. This is the process. Okay. Now, let me just give you quickly examples. What all things can you do? How can you, use? You can use, that text. You can use text and artistic productions for learning, right? There are different texts which are available. So you can use that. You can use text for making your learning contextualize, the curriculum contextualize. Because when Street said that when the student, they listen to the stories, right? By listening to stories of my family, my students, and recognizing and incorporating the knowledge from my students and home, the new pattern of dialogue it emerged. You can encourage the students to write down or to basically, to basically talk about themselves. What will happen when they will talk about themselves? They will talk about the social norms which they follow in the school, when in the house. How do they talk with their parents? And by analyzing those things, you may analyze and you can incorporate that learning into your teaching. So this is one, that using the context. And that, how can you make, there could be a different kind of text which you can use. Mentor, I'm not going to the details of it because otherwise it will be very very, time is actually, we are running out of time. So there are different kind of text which you can use: family journals, picture books, mentoring text. These can be used to basically using the text for contextualizing the learning. Another thing, you can use photographs as the means of educational contextualization. For example, in the class of history, what you can do, you can ask your student to make an assignment. You can give your student an assignment on collect the photographs of different monuments in your areas, and also how people are living their lives in the different social contexts. So through photographs, then you can ask them to make a gist or analyze those photographs and comes to an understanding about the social norms in the particular society, or maybe the structures of building in a particular era, historical era. So through photographs, you can contextualize the learning. You can give this exercise, you can incorporate this. Another thing is you can use digital media as a means of educational contextualization. Yeah, there are different digital medias now available. You can see in the picture also, there are phones, there are internet, there are other kind of digital medias which are available. So you can actually take use of the digital media to contextualize your educational learning. So that is how you can do it. So after this, when you contextualize the learning, how will you assess that contextualized learning? That you can do by what we call, by what I was talking, that is authentic assessment. What is authentic assessment? Can any one of you tell me what is an authentic assessment? What is an authentic assessment? See, authentic assessment is one in which students are asked to perform real world tasks, right? They have to apply the real world tasks and application. So when you have taught or when you have done so many adaptations in your teaching, it is important that you also use the assessment criteria of such a kind. Otherwise, what will happen? The learning has take place in a very active form, but the assessment, if you assess them on what, only on what is this, what is that, what is that, then the entire objective will be, or the entire exercise will go in vain. So therefore you have to use authentic assessment techniques to assess the learning. That is, you have to employ those kind of techniques which employ the real world task or demonstration of the meaningful applications of or understanding which they have developed during the time. I can give you examples from science. Like, for example, if you want to give, if you have taught a concept of pollution, okay, then you can ask them to basically compile a report or make a report on, how the trash is collected in the urban area. If you are in the urban area, similarly in the rural areas also you may use the same. So what this activity, otherwise what you could have done the other way out could be, what are the different ways of collecting the trash? What is the difference between this activity and the other one? If you give this kind of an activity, then what will happen that the student will directly involve into it. They will go, they can take photographs, they can do various means, and through that the authenticity will come in, rather than only giving them that what are the different ways of collecting the trash. This is one example. Another example is this is an example which I have taken from one of the journals. I forgot to link the source here. Say if you want to talk about the concept of insulation, right? So instead of directly only talking about what insulation is and how which insulator is better, this is the exercise which has been developed for authentic learning, authentic assessment. That is, this is the exercise that if you want to serve a soup to your customers or to your family member, and if there are three types of soups available, plastic bowl, clay bowl, or a metal bowl, in which of the bowl the insulation will be better, right? So this kind of activity which you can do, so student can actually do the little bit of experimentation, and then they can come out with which type of bowl is the best insulator, and they can also explain why do they feel that it is so. If you bring this kind of activity, this will become much more authentication. It will become, the student will be actively involving in also in their assessment process. So therefore, this is what I mean. This is what I wanted to discuss about contextualization, why contextualization to be done, and if at all you do the contextualization, you have to take it down to the level of the assessment, because if you don't contextualize, or if you don't contextualize even your assessment process, the entire process of learning will not be fruitful. I hope you enjoyed the session, and in the next part you are expected to undertake an activity where you have to identify a particular topic from your subject area, and you have to contextualize. So what I request you, that whichever topic you take, you contextualize as per your geographical conditions. That is what we have talked about in terms of place, in terms of students, in terms of pedagogy, in terms of discipline. So you have to take care of all these things in mind. With this, I thank you all for your active participation, and I really enjoyed taking this session. Thanks a lot.
So, thank you very much, learners, for joining us and attending the sessions. And now the sessions are over, and this was the last live session from School of Education. So I hope you all have enjoyed. I have already shared the link of the feedback in the chat box 2 3 times. So please share your feedback on that form link. I will again post in the chat box in next 2 or 3 minutes. If you have missed it, or you can explore in the upside, your PICs have already shared that link with you. Your feedback is very important and essential for us so that we can improve for the future. I thank to all PICs, RC staff, and the colleagues from School of Education IGNOU who contributed their lectures. So thank you very much.